Hi folks, Johnny Matthew here again. Welcome to Soundbites number 6. This is the 6th in a series of short chapter summaries from my new book, which is called Working with Troubled Children and Teenagers. So if you want to see the other 5, hop onto the YouTube channel or the website at johnnymatthew.com and you can see them there. But today we're looking at listening and the importance of listening. Catherine de Hoyk said, with the gift of listening comes the gift of healing. And if we think about what we know about troubled children and teenagers, that a relationship with a safe, significant other person, particularly an adult, can have a huge healing quality, then clearly listening is a really key part of that. So that's what we draw out in this chapter. So there are 4 main bits to talk about. So quickly, first one is the impact of being ignored. That's really profound. If you've ever been in a party or in a room with a bunch of people, mainly people perhaps who you don't know, or maybe you do, but you're having a conversation with someone and they're kind of not fully focused on you, they're kind of looking over your shoulder or other people in the room, or maybe clocking a sly look at their watch, and you just get the sense that they're really not with you. And you can feel alone in a crowded room as a result of that. But what that does is it affects our feelings and it affects the way we view ourselves. It can make you feel a bit rejected and a bit ignored and a bit like you're not the person with the social kudos in the room to command somebody's attention, which then impacts on the view of ourselves as well. We think, well, I'm not really worth it. I clearly don't have anything very interesting to say. And we're left in a really kind of negative state of mind just because somebody didn't listen and didn't attend. Now that's important to clock because that's what a lot of these children have faced, some of them throughout their entire developmental journey. If they haven't been attended to well at home, parented attentively, never attached to somebody properly, then they have the toxic residue of that kind of experience we just talked about in them, and it fuels their habits and their reflexive responses and undermines their relational ability and the ease with which they trust other people. So we need to grab hold of that and be aware of that. So the impact of being ignored is profound. Listening is a real instrument of change though, because if listening or not being listened to can impact me so negatively, then surely listening in itself can equally be very, very powerful. And also, if when I'm ignored, I feel negative and down on myself, then when I'm being attended to and I'm the focus of somebody's attention and somebody is really homed in on what it is I'm saying and thinking and feeling and they empathize with that, then that in itself is tremendously healing. So listening is very powerful, but also helping someone by listening well is really quite easy, albeit that it's very profound. So the impact of being ignored, listening as an instrument of change, and I unpack these in obviously more depth in the chapter. And then the third thing is that being ignored changes behavior. So if you're in that situation in the crowded room and somebody's not attending to you, we tend to change the way we are to put the situation right. We might move into their eye line. We may speak a little bit more loudly or become more animated or try and ask them a question to provoke a response. And in extreme situations, we may touch them or we may provoke them in some way. Kids will do this through shouting and chucking things around and swearing and being, in other ways, completely socially inappropriate. But it can be an attempt to grab the attention that they feel they lack. So being ignored changes behavior. Now, babies do that, toddlers do that, older children do that, and teenagers do that. So all the groups of children and young people that me and you guys work with will have some traits of this if they come from troubled and particularly traumatized or insecurely attached developmental histories. So being ignored changes the way they behave. So equally, listening is a tremendously powerful agent of change, and is a way that even though we may doubt our abilities therapeutically, if you like, or we're not sure we're using the right technique for this person's particular situation or developmental time or the issues that they're dealing with currently, or we worry about the sequencing of what we're doing. All of these things are legitimate concerns. But you know what? If we listen really well, and that impacts the feelings of the child, it also impacts the way they view themselves. It builds trust and relationship, which means disclosure is more likely. So we get better information and we're more able then to help in a targeted way. Then listening is far from being a fallback position when we're uncertain about other things, that it's actually a real golden core of this therapeutic alliance and this caring task that we're all about. So the impact of being ignored is crucial. The listening as an instrument of change is extremely powerful, because being ignored and being listened to changes behavior profoundly, and over time can be a real healing salve for the process of growth and development that these kids need. So lastly, in the chapter, I address this idea about how do we really listen? Because if it's so powerful, we need to figure out what to do so we can do much, much more of it. And I look about being aware. We've discussed being attentive, feeding back now in the moment, remembering what's been said and revisiting those later. So being aware, we have to deliberately be in the moment. Maybe we're on a home visit, maybe the child is going to come back from school if you're a foster carer, maybe you're going into a key work session in a residential home, whatever it might be, just take a moment. Who is this child? What have they been through? What do they need from me? Being aware means we can then be attentive. We go in with our senses wired and attuned to what the young person needs. It's important to feed back when the child is speaking to us as well, and when we're interacting, that it's not that we are holding back on our agenda, waiting for a space so that we can say our piece and push forward with what we want, but more that we hold that on the back burner in case we need to set the direction. But actually our senses are acutely attuned to what the child, as young person, is communicating to us, so that we can run with that and feedback in the moment through that non-verbal communicating of nods and verbal mirroring of the child's expression, but then also reflecting back, maybe saying, yeah, okay, I hear what you're saying, or maybe repeating the last few words of a sentence that the child uses. These are all techniques that allow us to feedback in the moment, nurture that listening dyad, that partnership that we're in at that second in time, to encourage the child in that, to put them at ease within it, and therefore solicit the best possible outcome from that interaction that we can. And then we need to remember what's been said. Sometimes that's really easy because kids tell us stuff that's profound or painful, sensitive, or is a key moment of disclosure, whatever it might be. We remember those. But it's in the other things. It's picking up the nuances. It's making mental notes so that when we go back into our own time and space, we can make a note and we can remember that stuff. It's so important to write that down, because the last thing we need to do then is revisit that later on. So the next time we see the child or young person, we can not only think about who they are, where they're at in life and what they need for us, we can review our notes about what was said last time, and therefore we can offer cues. And it saves the child having to build that sense of familiarity and play catch up. We can maybe not quite take up exactly where we left off, but be not that far behind. And that saves them time and focuses our time to their best advantage. So there we have it. The impact of being ignored, listening as an instrument of change, that being ignored and being listened to, crucially, changes behavior, and then a look at how do we really listen. So all of those things are covered in much more detail in the book chapter called Listening. And if you want some information on that, you can find it over at johnnymatthew.com/book. Or if you're convinced already, you can go over to Amazon and search for it, or go to jkp.com which is the publisher's website, and just search for me and you'll see the book there. It's called Working with Troubled Children and Teenagers. So that's it for this time. Next time, number 7, will be about giving. So I wish you well. Keep going. Bless you. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time. Cheers.